Probably the most bizarre and incredible story of cosmic miracle is the one that marked the career of the successor of Moses, Yoshua ben Nun. While pursuing the Amorites at Beth Koran, he directed the sun and the moon to stand still. And they did it, we are told, for the course of a whole day, so that an Israelite victory could be assured. For the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. So is it stated in Joshua chapter 10, verses 12 to 14. And the sun stood still, along with the moon, in the valley of Ajalon, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Are we then to assume on the basis of the book of Joshua that at some time during the middle of the second millennium, the earth's rotation about the sun was interrupted by a command of a mortal man? Joshua, speaking to the Lord, implored the startling cosmic disruption before the eyes of Israel. And these celestial bodies, the moon, the sun, so far away, whose cosmic DNA of energy dictates that they move along their precise, predestined orbital paths, obeyed as if this very interruption was cosmically present in their computerized program from the time of creation. In fact, the Zohar claims that indeed it was so. Joshua's halting of the sun and the moon was no different than Moses' parting of the Red Sea, when the Zohar states, in that hour, when the Israelites drew near to the sea, the Lord summoned the great angel appointed over the sea, the angel Michael, and said, when I created the world, I appointed you over the sea, making at the same time a contract with the waters that they must divide for the Israelites in their time of need. Now their hour of trial is come, and they must cross the sea. It therefore says, and the sea returned to his former strength. Exodus chapter 14, verse 27. The Hebrew word le'etono, his strength, also suggests litano, or to the pact that the sea had with the Lord when he created the universe. This is the end of the quotation of the Zohar. The natural tendency and internal energy intelligence of a stream propels it in constant, uninterrupted flow. The splitting of the Red Sea required the energy and intelligence of the seas to remain in suspended emanation for the time that was required for the Israelites to cross the sea. In the same fashion, the Lord, at the time of Joshua's need at Beth Koran, implemented the startling cosmic disruption of the natural function of the cosmos, which, by its very essence of a metaphysical DNA, dictated that the sun and moon move along their precise predestined paths. At the moment when Moses commanded the Red Sea to part, the seas of the entire world obeyed his command, thereby changing their internal DNA, thought, energy, intelligence that began from the time of their creation. In other words, what was necessary here was for man to exercise the power of his thought intelligence inasmuch as man controls the entire movement of the entire cosmic universe. Strange as it may sound, this is why the 3 verses mentioned previously are connected with the splitting of the Red Sea. The splitting of the Red Sea. Here was a battle that was taking place on a metaphysical level. And again, I have to repeat, and I guess I can't repeat it often enough, that we observe man today almost as a physical expression, no different than a table or a stone. The power of man is observed in a physical sense. The fact that man thinks merely separates him from the other kingdoms, but the Kabbalah goes much further and states that Adam was given the literal control and formulation of the universe. It was up to Adam to call things. And the Zohar says by his addressing himself, he moved everything from a potential to an active reality. These 3 verses, the mystery of the 72 letters, created for the benefit of Joshua in his time that the entire universe, which includes the sun and the moon, would have to conform to the bidding of Joshua no less than when Moses approached the Red Sea. This was the awesome power that was becoming a cosmic event. A cosmic event that became physically manifested and physically expressed. This was the event that made the 7th day of Passover the one that we celebrate. We're not here to recall the event. We are here to actively participate in that event. We are here to relive that event so that the energy, that thought-intelligent energy that created the cosmic miracle of the splitting of the Red Sea shall again become physically expressed to assist me, meaning myself, me as an individual who constantly is in need for and seeks energy to keep ourselves going and remaining possibly above the static, the upheaval, chaotic disorder that seems to be the norm of our universe. To permit us to rise above Holocaust, danger, disorder, and chaos. Can we frail human beings, succeed in this kind of an undertaking? The Bible is not here to narrate, tell famous stories. The Bible is here to assist us in tapping energies. It also provides the information, the channels by which we can make use of that awesome power. The awesome power that can change nature. The awesome power that created the narration of the splitting of the Red Sea. This is what we're trying to do this evening. Therefore, the mystery of the 72 letters was revealed to the Israelites just prior, states the Zohar, to the advent of the cosmic event called the splitting of the Red Sea. For without this knowledge, without these proper channels, without the secret of the mystical 72 letters, there could never have occurred that particular cosmic event. We are told that this event took place exactly at midnight. And so, to permit the students of these recordings to make use of Kabbalistic knowledge, at exactly 12 o'clock, we make this effort on Yesod of Hesed, because again we're dealing with Hesed, the framework of the seed, the framework where all is included. The beginning, the seed, the sperm, represent beginning. If we can connect to the beginning, then all that ensues and follows is merely a reflection and an expression of the original seed. And this is where the Bible assists us in taking that metaphysical DNA of Mars that we discussed previously, in regaining control over the negative forces, the Dark Lord, the Darth Vaders of our universe, and at least for me personally, create a security shield that when I'm faced with an enemy, when I'm faced with circumstances that seem to be beyond my control, on this week, in this week, on this particular day, when the manifestation became actual, in other words, Yesod, which is the culmination, which is the seventh day of Passover, when the seed becomes expressed, at that moment, if I can only tap that cosmic energy intelligence of the seed to provide all of the benefits that we have already discussed in our tapes on Passover. And therefore, on the seventh day of Passover, in the evening, at 12 o'clock a.m., we begin our meditation, the same meditation that is required for all connections and tappings of awesome power of the cosmic intelligence. The meditation that we shall make a sincere effort to come to grips with our own personal desire to receive for oneself alone, and make every effort to to at least think that in our daily activities we hopefully shall transform the desire to receive for oneself alone to one of sharing. The entire knowledge of the Kabbalah has a built-in security valve. Today, there is no fear, according to the great sage and Kabbalist, Rabbi Abraham Azulai, who declared, sell this information in the marketplace, provided for anyone who seeks it. But never fear that for its misuse, because there is a prerequisite in this information and these connections becoming a reality. It requires a true and sincere effort to constantly climb the rungs of the spiritual ladder. In a nutshell, to make every effort to transcend the desire to receive for oneself alone into one of a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. Having completed this sincere meditation, taking it one step, choosing someone, a member of the family, a friend, or a close associate that we may have had some falling outs with, and where there are gray areas as to whether I or they were right, to resolve and make a resolution that I shall make every effort to consider the aspect of love thy neighbor, which embodies the transformation of a desire to receive for oneself alone to one of sharing. After having gone through this meditation, we are then prepared to make that daring step of tapping that awesome energy that created the splitting of the Red Sea. Therefore, the Zohar tells us there was an original contract between the Lord and water, that while its natural tendency is to flow, to move outwards, suddenly the contract called for a cessation of its natural energy intelligence to flow outwards, inasmuch as water is considered a right column thought energy intelligence. But what was demanded at equally, and that's why the verse stresses the fact of when in verse 27 of chapter 14, and Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength. The word here, le'etano, does not mean its strength, but returning to its original contract. Why was the contract necessary? Because the water has a thought energy intelligence of sharing, its right column. So while it consented to the splitting of the Red Sea to permit the Israelites passage to reach freedom and the other side, nevertheless, at the same time, verse 28 says, and the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen. Of Pharaoh that went in after them into the sea, there remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea. Here, water was called upon to express itself in a duality, creating freedom, a miracle of dry land on the one hand, and returning to destroy on the other. This was against the basic natural tendency of water. The thought, energy, intelligence. We're not discussing now water, the physical aspect of water. There's intelligence in that water. From a Kabbalistic point of view, 99% is intelligence. How could water return? The sun, the moon, were created for a purpose. And here at the same time, in Joshua's times, they were going to participate in a cosmic event that meant good for one and destruction for the other. And therefore the Zohar tells us that each day, on the third day when water was created, or on the fourth day when the sun and the moon were created, there was a contract made with these physical entities that their thought intelligence would have to provide good, meaning if the Jew, the Israelite, represented an all-embracing, positive, unified whole, that was the result. It would come in its latest hour and assist the Israelite in achieving freedom. Not freedom on a physical basis. They were happy, as we said before, to be in Egypt. We're speaking of the reality of freedom, real freedom. The Egyptian did not represent people. They represented the thought, energy, intelligence of negativity, the Darth Vaders. Man's inhumanity to man. Water would be compelled to destroy, in spite of it being against its natural tendency. To act in any other manner than one of a positive nature. The moon, the sun specifically, that life-giving force. Can you imagine if the sun stopped for a week, a month, or a year, and there was no nightfall? There would be no water in the world. Everything would be turned to ash. There was a structure, there was an order at the time of creation. And yet, the sun was called upon in time of need, not need of the Israelite, because the Israelite here represented that which they supposedly were told to represent, and which they accepted to represent, was the aspect of a desire to receive for the sake of sharing. And their enemy, narrated in the Bible, is not referring to people as such, but rather to a thought, energy, intelligence of negativity. That for them, to overcome negative energy, thought, intelligence, they would have to transform that desire to receive to one of sharing. And therefore, at 12 o'clock, when the actual splitting of the Red Sea took place, we gather near water, because all waters participated in this cosmic event, and we recite the song that Moses sang along with the children of Israel. Chapter 15 in Exodus, from verse 1, we continue until the completion of the song, which is chapter 15, verse and including verse 19. Bearing in mind that the reading and reciting of this song that the Bible tells us was a song that the Jews sang during the culmination of this cosmic event, the splitting of the Red Sea. From a Kabbalistic point of view, this is merely the connection. In fact, if we notice the first verse of chapter 15, it says, Az Yashir Moshe. Not that Moses sang, but Moses shall sing. In other words, this was not the song they sang. It is in future tense. Moses will sing. The future tense signifies that on beholding of this miracle, when you make the contact with that miracle, then in effect, you, no matter when in time, even after the event had taken place, but by making use of these mystical 72 letters, along with the song that the Jew sang when the miracle occurred, he was then actually making contact with that power. It was the power that made him free. It was that power of freedom, the power that the water had to cease, change its natural course. In other words, the dominion of man over all of the physical events that occur throughout his lifetime will be controlled by man himself. This is what we're connecting with. This was the purpose of a holiday. This was the purpose of remembering, to provide us with the proper timetable so that we can succeed in trying to make life a little easier as we progress down the road of the following 12 months. The story of the splitting and crossing of the Red Sea and the incredible command by Joshua to make the sun stand still is certainly beyond the belief of even the most pious in today's world. We all have experienced, let's say, the solar year, consisting of 365 days, during which the moon circles the earth and the earth rotates around the sun. That the sun and the moon should come to a complete standstill simply is an incomprehensible cosmic event. Unless, and I say unless, we can face the realization that celestial intelligences, otherwise known as celestial internal cosmic energy forces, can be and are directed by man in his altered state of consciousness. If this sort of revolutionary thinking is acceptable, then we can proceed to investigate and ultimately understand how the earth was forced out of its regular motion. The same is true for splitting of the Red Sea. It is something that none of us have ever experienced, and yet the Torah expects its adherents to its laws, the Israelites, and those religions that followed and accepted the Torah, to comprehend, accept a splitting of the Red Sea when, for the most part, this kind of phenomena has never been witnessed or seen by any living human being. This now would lead us to question as to how, where, and when did cosmic domination occur that can lead us to believe that the miracle of Moses in splitting of the Red Sea, or Joshua's miracle with the sun, was more than a fascinating fable concocted in the midst of time. The key, however, is found in Exodus, chapter 12, when the verse declares, "This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you." This is the Bible's first mention of the zodiac sign Aries as the Rosh Hadashim, the first or head of all of the months and the head of the zodiac system. The key words in the Exodus verse just quoted are "to you." With that phrase alone, cosmic control shifted at the time of Exodus, leaving the children of Israel, and with them all mankind, in control. In fact, without that control, the commandments later handed to Moses on Mount Sinai, "Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal," would have been beyond the grasp of a species that always had killed and stolen as naturally as it had breathed, starting from Cain and downwards in the path of time. By shifting control to you, meaning mankind, the Creator conferred upon his creation an ethic and a responsibility by which he would be bound from that day forth. With control of the negative cosmic energy by which men had killed and stolen in unconcerned manifestation of their desire to receive for the self alone, they suddenly were able to control their destiny, rule themselves, something unknown to mankind. This all came about with the fall of Egypt's middle kingdom. Mankind could now tap the positive energy, and Aries became the first of all the months, thus bringing all celestial bodies under the domination of man. Joshua, knowing that, literally was able to halt the rotation of the earth in apparent defiance of all natural law. The month of the Exodus, which occurred in Aviv, the spring, becomes the first month of the year. Consequently, a strange celestial event was created, dictating that from the moment of the Exodus onward, new cosmic dimensions and forces came into being. With the end of the Middle Kingdom in Egypt, when the great Exodus took place, a new age of cosmology was ushered in. This was the significance of the precept concerning Kiddush HaHodesh, the renewal, the sanctification of the new moon. Therefore, in considering the splitting of the Red Sea, considering the holiday of Passover, it is not one that we celebrate because it occurred and to remind us that it did occur, but rather that we today, in this year of our existence, we can now rule and control our own destiny. Something that was impossible and beyond the grasp of all of mankind, to change things, to assume control. This was the high point. This was the aspect of the cosmic table of Passover, along with the splitting of the Red Sea. Therefore, the sanctification of the new moon was of such importance that there seemed to be an urgency in proclaiming this commandment while the Jews were yet in Egypt, rather than merely include it within the framework of the main commandments of the Torah, which was promulgated in the wilderness of Mount Sinai. Why was this so important? Why the significance of this precept that was ordained even before the children of Israel witnessed the declaration of "I am the Lord," or the highly moral and ethical doctrines of "Thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal"? The sanctification of the new moon, then, was actually the first commandment to the Jews in Egypt, preceding even the 10 Commandments. Why? Because it dealt with the first tapping of the positive cosmic energy, which alone can offset the power of the Egyptians, who knew how to tap the moon's negative energy. Moses proclaimed the first tapping as necessary to make manifest even the 10th plague of the Exodus, the slaying of the firstborn, in which the Israelites made use of the lamb. In modern parlance, maybe we can say that the lamb was a software by which the program of a world totally consumed with negativity could be erased. The Exodus was not for the Jew alone. All who were enslaved became free on that day. And since the Lamb was the software of the process, it is easy to see why Aries is the first of months. Yet, over thousands of years, no attempt has really ever been made by conventional astrology to explain this phenomena, why Aries remained the first month of the year. So we can now understand the significance of the biblical cosmic timetable, by which we can learn how to tap this awesome power of the cosmos and its cosmic intelligence, in which we can now establish our own destiny, changing the cassettes from time to time, changing a life of misfortune to one of good fortune. This was the lesson of the 7th day of Passover. Now, this tape is not going to be dealing with the effectiveness of control of cosmic and astral influences. Nevertheless, slavery is a condition under which one is subjected to the astral, physical, and external energy forces of our planet, even of our universe, and above all, slaves to man's desire to receive for himself alone. Only those instilled with the spirit of the Kabbalah understand that slavery is not something we celebrate, or freedom of slavery, freedom of bondage, which is celebrated once a year. For most inhabitants of planet Earth, the Exodus has yet to begin. For those who know the importance of the Exodus, understand that we have an opportunity to free ourselves from bondage each and every single year. That is why in Exodus it is stressed that this day you go forth in the month of Aviv. This is why the Jew is freed from bondage. The conjunction of the solar aspect of Nisan, Aries, and the lunar cycle constitutes a team of incredible energy forces working to produce a celestial confrontation at the time of Exodus. It was a confrontation in which the Jew created a cosmic energy force we call freedom. But even today, one cannot have it simply by wishing. The contemporary student of Kabbalah has the same power at his fingertips, but to grasp it, he must apply discipline and meditation. Tradition alone simply will not get the job done, as we have not gotten this kind of job done over a period of 2,000 years since the destruction of the Second Temple. Tradition is little more than the owner's manual spelling out how connections must be made and buttons pushed. But without making use of that force, we could miss that particular vital combination of celestial forces under which the required variety of cosmic forces pervades the universe. The most distressing aspect of what was occurring in Egypt and throughout the world at that time, during the time of Israel's bondage, was not so much the gravity of all the suffering through which the Jews had been going, but the dampening of the human spirit, the freedom of thought, the freedom of action, so vital to independent individuals. Passover was able to cope with that particular problem and provide freedom to the spirit. Today, as never before, we are ruled by an unprecedented interconnectedness of effects. Something that happens in China directly influences Americans' perception and living patterns. Political conflicts in the Middle East seriously affect the world economy. Tyranny in South Africa reverberates on Wall Street. This growing interrelationship has frustrated the attempts of poorer nations to develop effective industries or even manage their economies. It is the great exodus on a stage for yet another encore. And the metaphysical connections by which the Jews dealt with the first one are still in place and functional for all who have the will and the knowledge to use and tap the awesome energy prevailing during the period of Passover.